It's October 24th, 2019, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.
Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, coming to you, as always, from Studio B here in beautiful Bridgeport, Chicago, the Co-Prosperity Sphere. Thanks, as always, for having me on, guys. I appreciate it every week. I'm a little bit shocked and surprised that you'll have me back on, but thank you, especially to the fearless leaders of the Co-Pro and Lumpen Radio, primarily Logan Bay, and way down the line after that, Jamie Checker. But thanks to both of you guys for having me on. And thanks to all of you guys for tuning in to 105.5 FM Lumpen Radio. I would say join the chat room or the app, but I was told today that the app is broken by someone who tried to tune in last week. So maybe don't just go on the airwaves. Do it the old-fashioned way. Bust out the radio, go to your grandma's house or whoever still owns a radio and tune it in, or go to your car. People still have them in their car, and go to 105.5 FM. Or if you're listening via podcast, you can listen that way as well. I have I got to turn off all my alerts. I have a new laptop, and I don't know how to work it yet. I sound like a pretty hip young guy, right? So if you do enjoy the show, whether you listen to it via the airwaves or over podcast or whatever, if you want to leave a review, that's always appreciated. If you want to reach out to us, you can email us at insiders@craftbeertemple.com. And yeah, that's about it. If you are listening for the first time, I like to do a little rundown of what this show is, the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. And essentially, it is me trying to recreate what I really enjoy the most about being in the beer industry. As somebody cracks open probably a seltzer, knowing that it's Bryan Roth, it's probably a seltzer, if his reporting is any indication of what he's actually drinking. But what I was saying is, what I like to do is sit around with people and talk about beer, because it's something that we've made a part of our lives. So I like to sit around with people who have also made beer a part of their lives, whether it's by making it or selling it or educating people on it or writing about it or whatever it is, and just kind of talk about this thing that we all have a common love for, and that is what this show tries to recreate. And that's, so that's what we try to do. I will say, before I introduce my guests for tonight, that their opinions are their own and solely their own, and not the opinion of any other entity that they may or may not be affiliated with, such as Lumpen Radio or anything. But that was just an example. But with that, let me tell you who I have. I've got a pretty awesome panel. I'm excited about it. It's not going to be as hot takey as I would hope, but I'll fill that role for tonight, guys. So I got that covered. But we'll introduce everyone. We go in order of seniority, that being how many times you've been on the show. Pretty clear-cut person in first place. That would be the beer cruncher himself, the beer aficionado, the man with many beer names, but I go by his actual name, Doug Veliky. How are you, Doug?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back, Chris.
Yeah, man. What's up with you?
I just got back from GABF. That was my first time at the festival,
Yes.
first time in Denver. I had actually never been to Denver, so it was awesome. Everything I was warned about, I don't think was really true. I loved it.
Okay.
I would go back.
So
every
you
year if I
love
could.
when people break their glasses so you can cheer
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
I couldn't.
I
get
never
enough.
took you as that type of guy. Never seemed like a jerk, but I guess I was wrong.
I even started one of the cheers. I kind of saw it happening in slow motion, and I got the ovation going.
Good. So you loved it. That's great.
I loved it.
You know what? I'm glad to hear you say that because I believe you, and so many other people who are probably too much like me and just like jaded and cynical come back and be like, ugh, which is why I've never been. It's really by far the biggest one that I've never gone to. And people say, you're not missing anything. But you know what? I gotta go. And Hobbs is looking at me like, yeah, I gotta go. He's nodding, and so.
Yeah, I went in with no plan, but then just kind of went on Twitter and realized all these people I've talked to before and maybe met once, in many cases had never met, and just started meeting up with people.
Did you like set up meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah? That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to come here. Appreciate it. My next guest is here virtually. In voice only, although I can just imagine him in his deep V. Obviously, you guys know who I'm talking about just based on that alone. Mr. Bryan Roth, how are you?
I'm good. I will never get tired of that introduction.
Good, because that's good because it's what it will always be.
It's always got.
It's always going to be.
Never been truer and deeper
Oh, good. That's great. That's awesome.
than those fees.
How are you doing?
I am busy. I actually got to meet Doug in Colorado and Denver. Got to meet him face to face for the first time as part of stuff around GABF, which was great.
Did you realize he was so swole? He doesn't seem like he's that jacked.
It was intimidating, but once he took his shirt off in the middle of a tap room, he jumped on top of a table.
That's his thing.
And screamed, "I'm the cruncher."
Yeah.
It just like you have no reflection other than just kind of like you got to scream and run the other direction.
So
but
he's
very nice outside of that, though.
Yeah. And tell the truth, you're the one who he started the glass breaking chant about. He smashed it out of your hand and then went, oh.
The cruncher's got to crunch.
Yeah.
You know?
Just like, I can just picture it now, just like locking eyes about an inch from you, daring you to say something about it. It's very Doug. Anyway.
Great hugger, though. Great hugger.
Yeah, he is a great hugger. We were just talking about that before the show. Well, thank you for coming on a little bit of short notice. I very much appreciate that. And I got to say, you've been killing it lately with your articles. I've been enjoying reading your stuff.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah. My next guest, man, who is, I think it's been a while, but you might be the next most senior member, Mr. Hobbs. It's been a long time.
It's possible. It's been.
How are you?
I'm well, very well.
Yeah,
How are you?
Mr. Eric Hobbs?
Happy to be here, man.
Yeah. So what's new with you?
In like the 3 years since I've been here. Or,
Take that any way you want.
No, things have been great, man. Been busy, like Doug. Haven't traveled to any big beer festivals, but been bouncing around all of the markets that we're selling some beer to and introducing some new fun things and still enjoying everything. So happy.
Can you do like a little bit of a reset, let people know what you're doing right now?
So since I was last here, I have left Penrose Brewing, which would have been the last brewery I was with when I was on this show last time, which was, like I said, 3 years ago. I'm currently the COO of Solemn Oath Brewery out of Naperville, and we are producers of fine craft beers here in the Chicagoland area. We do a little bit of distro outside of the state, but for the most part still keep ourselves close to home. And as of Monday, are now producers of a fine new craft seltzer.
Oh, you hear that?
You know, Bryan, I brought it for you, buddy, but I thought you'd be here to drink it, and I didn't know you were virtually here.
Yep. Yeah.
I should have brought it by your office. That was my bad.
I will accept all descriptors.
Okay. Well, it's water with natural flavors
And carbonation.
and carbonation in a can.
Oh.
I'm in.
Okay. All right.
Wonderful.
And is there alcohol in it?
There is alcohol in it. It is 5% alcohol. Gluten-free, sugar-free, all the things.
Got it. All the freeze.
Yeah, it's fun, man.
Okay. What's it called?
It's called City Water.
City Water? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Damn, some shade getting thrown by Roth. No, I'm just I'm joking.
He's just mad he's
trying
not
to
in the
start
studio drinking it first.
I am.
Yeah, I know. Well, you'll just have to drink whatever garbage shelter you're drinking out there because you're not getting the good stuff here. My next guest, I'll just move right on from that. It's also been a while. Mr. Dave Kahl. How are you?
It was probably at least 5 years ago.
It was a
How long have
long
you been doing
time.
the show?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been doing it 5 years, so but maybe 4.
So it was probably it was before you started.
You were
that's how long.
on with as like a chaperone for somebody from Ballast Point,
That's
right?
right. Yeah, yeah.
And we managed to just get you to sit down and put on some headphones and stuff like that, which is really hard to do to get anyone from a distributor to sit down in front of a mic. So for me, especially, it was like one of probably the first 20 or so episodes we ever did, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is nice. We're going to actually getting a distributor on. This is pretty cool. So
And I probably felt like I couldn't really say anything at all.
probably that's what all distributors, they
Right,
kind of,
yeah.
they don't really talk very
Get a
much.
little program.
Except Brian Kirby, he'll come on. He'll say some stuff.
Kirby tells it like it is.
Yeah.
Or back when Modica was with Windy City, he would just say what is on his mind.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I
the
think.
good old days.
Yeah, the good old days. What's new with you, man?
Well, I also was out at GABF judging for the first time, which was insane, really. I was out at NBWA, which is the National Beer Wholesalers Association conference. So that was the week before GABF.
Is it always the week before, and is it
I have
always
no
in
idea.
Denver? Okay.
So I worked for a distributor for 6 years and left earlier this year, and I'd never been to NBWA while I was with the wholesaler. So I finally go after I leave that business. But I did a talk with Ray Daniels. We talked about education platforms, and then drove from there to Denver, hit a whole bunch of national parks on the way, which is a blast, and then judged for 3 days at GABF. It is, I mean, I've been to the festival many times, and this is, I actually drank a whole lot more judging than I ever did at
Oh,
the
really?
festival. It's amazing, how much, we had I think I can talk about a little bit of it. Like
Yeah,
we had 330 judges for 9,500 beers.
Wow.
Holy cow.
Wow.
And just remember that many of those beers get judged more than one time.
Yeah.
Because like the hazy IPA category has so many entries. I think there were 5 or 6 different rounds of judging for that alone. I judged that one, I think a few different rounds.
Mm-hmm.
So, some of these beers get judged several times over. So I'm not sure what the final number of actual samples is, but it's well over 10,000.
Wow. How long does it take, the judging process at GABF?
It's all day for 3 days. And we started.
Whoa.
Yeah, we started at, I think first flights landed at like 8:30 a.m. And then we were done by about 4:30.
Knowing you have to do that for 2 more days.
Oh, yeah,
Fun.
yeah.
Sounds
yeah.
like a lot of fun.
It was, honestly.
Did you have fun?
It was a blast.
Oh,
and mainly
okay.
because, it was.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, but it was a blast because I I judged with people that I'm like really impressed with. I mean, hell, I judged with Steve Dressler.
Oh,
I mean, I'm just sitting at the table with Steve Dressler. I'm like, oh my God, this is, a total icon. And I mean, I judge with people like Chad Jacobson, who was just a blast to listen to. Also, he had a lot of great commentary. But you respect everybody at the table too, and they all are great judges, and you're not ever thinking you are better than anybody or worse. We're all everybody's high quality there. It's great.
That's cool.
So then came back, and last week we did the Master Cicerone exam here in town, which was fun.
How many
too.
people took it?
I think there were 19 or 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get at least somebody will pass that test. Probably.
When you took the test, how many people were taking the test with you?
7.
7. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. And you now are the senior most Master Cicerone. That's officially.
I mean, everybody's got some first woman for youngest.
I meant on the show. I don't care about
oldest.
overall. I just mean on this show. Yeah. No, but Pat Fahey comes on quite a bit. He likes talking about how he's the youngest. He likes to talk about that. If you ever talk to Pat, I mean, can't get a sentence out of the guy without him reminding you that he was the youngest Master Cicerone. But I want him to know, because I know he listens to the show, that he wasn't the first on this show. It was Mr. Dave Kahl, the first. I had to rope him in. But you were the first overall too, right? Honestly, weren't you? Number 1?
Second, and the oldest.
And the oldest.
Who was first?
A guy named Andrew Van Til, who worked for a distributor in Michigan.
Yeah, right.
He's pretty much retired from what I understand from the beer biz. But that was 2009. He passed. 2010 I did. It was, I think 6 people took it when his round and 7 during mine. At one point it got up to 24 as a maximum, but they had to kind of rearrange the way the exam went.
Have you noticed anything about the people taking it back when you took it in 2010 versus the people who took it, 9 years later, just recently?
I mean, they're all passionate people in the business. Most of the people that I took it with back in the old days are industry vets. People today, I don't know them all, but they're all good, passionate beer people in the business.
I think so. I mean,
it would have to be, right?
Yeah.
Whether they pass it or not, they're doing great things for craft beer. So, got to give them a nod for all that.
I was just curious if people were, I don't know, if you noticed if they were younger, or there's more restaurant people now, or there's less, I don't know, if you've just seen any trends or anything like that, because you've been helping administer the test for years.
Yeah, I've done I've helped with kind of be the barometer for the tasting exam ever since I did it. So unfortunately I've taken the tasting exam a dozen times or more. But there might be more brewery people nowadays than there used to be.
Why do you think someone at a brewery would benefit from being a Master Cicerone? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Why would they benefit? I mean, I guess it depends on their brewery and their situation. But some of them, like, a couple of the guys at BrewDog have passed it.
Yeah.
Pat Rue from the brewery passed.
Yeah.
I'm sure that
Avery Swanson recently.
And Avery, right?
Yeah.
Great example from formerly of Jester King.
Yeah.
And there are several others who are brewery people too. I don't know what the definitive benefit would be, but
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
I think in some cases somebody like a Pat Rue might have taken out, and I don't know Pat very well, but I would imagine someone like that just has so much knowledge and goes, I want to see if I can pass this test.
Right.
He's the owner of the company. He doesn't need to get a promotion, right?
Right.
So I'm not sure how it would really help him, but be more of a personal challenge. Others, I'm sure it can help them move up in their company or solidify their position or something.
I think it can give you a voice to kind of raise the quality bar within your company.
Yeah.
And just be that person who's got kind of beyond next level expertise as to spotting things that maybe others wouldn't spot. I think that's invaluable to have around.
Yeah, I mean, the Master Cicerone is just like you said, beyond next level.
Yeah, I
it's just
didn't know the right term to use.
That's a good one though. I would never tell Pat that, but thanks all you guys. We got 4 of us here. Well, including me, 5. Well, 6 in the room total, but want to go through and talk about some good beverages we've had lately. I would normally say beer, but I know the company I'm with, so we're going to get at least one. We're going to probably get 3 seltzers, 2 of them with alcohol that people are going to mention, but we'll see. Anything you guys have had lately or are looking forward to trying? Anything that just been...
So over here in North Carolina, we had the upstate New York staple Wegmans grocery stores recently come down and open up their first store in the state.
Oh, yeah.
In Raleigh. As someone who grew up with Wegmans, I'm super excited. And lo and behold, first trip, they've got a section of their beer aisle dedicated to Jenny. I'm drinking a Jenny Classic right now, waiting on cream ale to make its way down south. Can't wait when that finally happens. But that is a hometown bit of hometown pride right there.
Very cool. Anyone else want to go?
You guys know Allagash brought cans to Chicago, right? Of course, we all know that, right?
Yeah.
And my good buddy Mike Polis, he was kind enough to give us some cans to drink at home, and that's pretty much all we've been drinking for about the past 2 weeks.
You've been a fanboy
I
of
love
Allagash for a
White.
long time.
I love Allagash White, and it helps that it's just such a rock solid beer. And then the fact that cans are here now, and I do a lot of my drinking outside, preferably on a golf course. Yeah, it works out great.
What's the river something or other they have? River something. It's a great beer. It's more of a table.
Oh man, I can't remember the name.
I know the one you're talking about. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's in 16-ounce cans.
Yeah,
I like that one.
So
too.
is White. Yep. I mean, it's a heck of a value. I mean, $12 for 4-pack of White 16-ounce cans. Love it. Mm-hmm. Happy to have those guys here in cans.
Cool. Dave or Doug?
I had 2 that I'll go through them quick. Both at GABF. One was from Russian River. So they recently killed one of my favorites from them, which was Sanctification, which was a wine barrel aged blonde, and but they replaced it with this beer called Intinction, which is a Pilsner aged in Sauvignon Blanc barrels with Sauvignon Blanc grapes. And they bottle it now, and it's kind of one of their new things. And it is so good. It's like if you like Temptation from them, it's up your alley, but even more.
I like that's my favorite beer of theirs.
It goes down even easier than that one. Like it's probably a little lower on the ABV scale, but it's up that one's alley, but it's like nothing I've ever had before. So that was one that I tried a couple times because you only get like an ounce or so. So I pretty much went back to that one each day. Another one that I had years ago and revisited and am just still blown away by, just from more on the creativity side, is a Blueberry Muffin from Great Notion, which is a Berliner that they do, that they somehow make it taste like the smell is for first and foremost, but then the taste like warm dough and blueberries, and it is just, you smell this thing and taste it, and it's just like this really neat creation. I don't know how to explain it. I had it in probably 2015 at their brew pub when I was in Portland, Oregon, and then hadn't had it since, and then tried it again, and same thing. Loved it.
Thing.
Yeah.
Very cool. Dave, anything you've had lately that you've liked?
It was just anything from Collective Arts I've been really into lately, whenever I can get some of their stuff.
Out of Toronto, right?
Hamilton, just south of Toronto, kind of between Toronto and Niagara Falls.
Okay.
I know it's not exactly beer, but the Stem Chili Guava cider's out, which is always fun. And then I brought some Pachuga, some Cinco Sentidos mezcal that you got to try.
I want to try the one you have. I've had some of the others, and they're legit. They are legit. For me, oh man, I can't do it. I'll have to wait for I think it's called, I forget the name of it. There's a new Pilsner, German Pilsner that just came into the market that's amazing, but I'm not going to talk about it this time, even though I just did. You know what I had, and I was surprised because I didn't think I was going to like it, was Anchor Liberty Ale. Really weird hops that you just do not taste anymore. It was like minty and woody, and it's like, what is this flavor? And you're like, oh, this is what hops tasted like 20 years ago. So that was kind of cool. I didn't think I was going to like it. I ended up having multiples, so that surprised me. But anyway, I think it's time for us to take a quick station ID and run some promos and stuff, and then we'll come back and get into the topics on the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable.
Lumpin' Radio is proudly sponsored by Illinois' largest independently owned craft brewery, Revolution Brewing, brewed in Chicago and only in Chicago. The League of Heroes IPA Variety Pack brings Anti-Hero together with Hazy Northeast Hero, All-New Midwest Hero, and Piney Classic Northwest Hero. 1 pack, 4 super fresh IPAs, on shelves now. Join the revolution.
All right, welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I always, I cut out the promos almost always, but that Boogie Monsters promo is staying in. That had Matt Zawada's hand all over that copy, so that's pretty awesome to hear. Anyway, welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I am your host, Chris Quinn, and I am joined by my panel of guests, which include Bryan Roth, Doug Veliky, Eric Hobbs, and Dave Kahl. And we have a lot of really good items on the outline to talk about. But, of course, this being the Insiders Roundtable, we're just going to go off script and not talk about any of them, and instead talk about a Twitter war that happened today, because that's really what we want to do. We just want to talk about people throwing shade at one another. Not quite. What happened is essentially the friend of the show and frequent guest, Josh Noel, made an announcement and kind of had a little bit of a uproar in the geekiest of geeky circles on beer Twitter. If you don't know about it, I highly recommend you not check out beer Twitter. But yes, he was essentially saying that he's been blacklisted by Goose Island, specifically for Bourbon County. And he always used to have, I mean, for a while it was he got exclusive preview of these beers, of each year's releases, and he would do reviews of them and write about all of them. And, you know, a lot of breweries send out, you know, media preview samples and stuff like that, but he was exclusive for a while, and then that went away, and he was, you know, still part of an overall, he still got, you know, a sneak peek of these and would write an annual write-up. And apparently last year they were giving him a little bit of trouble, and then this year they just flat out said, no, you're not going to be previewing these beers, you're not coming to our official preview event, and no, we don't have any samples available to you. Sorry, we just don't have enough. And I think it's fair to say, I don't think I'm betraying any confidences, but when, I mean, he called me and talked to me a little bit about it, and he was, then he went on to Twitter and just kind of put out his case. So a couple, I won't say who, but people on the panel thought that would be an interesting thing to talk about. So I figured, why not? Let's talk about it. Who wants to start? Who has a history with Bourbon County here on the panel? Who is it? Oh, it's you, Mr. Hobbs. You were not the person who said you wanted to talk about it. I will say that.
What did I say to you before, Doug? I was like, I don't want to talk about this at all.
I hope he calls on me first.
That's not what I said. That is not what I said. I said, I don't want to talk about this at all.
Oh, okay. I honestly did not hear you say that. So
No, it's not that it's okay. So let me just.
Why don't you want to talk about it? Or you not want to talk about it? No,
it's honestly, it's because I kind of see it from both sides.
Okay.
Like it was actually, ironically enough, I was with Josh earlier today, and I was kind of like, hey man, this is interesting, right? Because I've always known him as such a supporter of and proponent for the story of Bourbon County, yet I kind of see it from both sides, which I told him. I was like, well, I kind of get it. Well, it's been a tough year and a half for your relationship with Goose Island, and I understand that bruising of that relationship hit pretty personal. I mean, that goes right to the core when you start telling a story about the founders and the people involved. So I kind of get it. Not saying that I agree with it, because he is still probably some of the most powerful local media. I still think whatever he says draws a lot of attention, and good, bad, or indifferent, it's still attention, right? Especially as you're coming into Bourbon County season and you want to raise the profile. So I don't know if I understand why it would have happened from either side, but I kind of get why both sides are upset. So that's kind of why I'm like, I don't know if I have anything really to contribute other than I kind of get both sides of it, right? So that's it.
I'll say, and guys, jump in and say whatever you want, or stay silent. That's totally fine. The thing that interests me about this is one, it's to me is clearly punitive. I don't think really anyone is saying that it's not, punitive in some way. That despite the official announcement that, look, your hat wasn't your name wasn't drawn out of the hat. Sorry, man. Maybe better luck next year. It was not better luck next year. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's not going to get it. And they didn't come out and say that, and or even be like, listen, X, Y, and Z hate your guts, and they're going to be at the tasting, so we just did not want to go there. Like, they didn't say any of that stuff either. But so given that, I also it surprises me that someone at Goose Island, and I can totally see from them, like, hey man, some of what you said was not cool. Why are we just going to give you, this access now? But at the same time, they have to realize he's going to get this stuff anyway. He's going to get the bottles of beer. He's going to write a review, and now he's just going to be more ticked off. Now, as a journalist, he should probably, and I trust he will, still, write about the taste of the beers in an unbiased fashion. I have no reason to believe he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't be vindictive. But I also, as you can see on Twitter, I don't think he's going to shy away from the fact that he was blacklisted by it and let his readers know that. And I just don't see how Goose Island wins that way. I don't see what they have to gain from preventing him from getting it officially through them. That's what I don't get, is what do they have to gain from that? I don't know. I mean, any opinion on maybe why it's in their best interest not to do it? Potentially, as a, even like a devil's advocate, listen, it does make sense for them not to invite him.
I have lots of thoughts.
Okay.
I just don't know where to begin. I agree with Eric from this standpoint of I've found this fascinating, because I am not surprised at all that they, are uncomfortable with him being there. I believe he used the word uncomfortable in one of the responses that he got. I think he got a couple rounds of feedback, and one of them said that they weren't comfortable with him being there. And I get that. And for me, it's less the book than it is the personal blog. And I think that might be to them over the top, more so and that's more about AB InBev than it is Goose Island, though it's certainly connected to Goose Island as well. I don't know if that's the straw that broke the camel's back, but there's been multiple blog posts about maybe it was Taste of Chicago or the big fest that or Anheuser-Busch sponsored, and then about the illusion of choice and things like that.
Yeah, he does talk about that a lot and uses that term. Yeah,
I get it when someone has a personal blog that's focused on that's detrimental to your company, even though it's true and totally fair reporting, that you wouldn't want them at a marketing event. And then I totally agree with his side of being frustrated of what he's really done for that brand from a coverage standpoint and fairness and all the positivity he has brought to it. That's positive to Bourbon County, but maybe negative toward spreading awareness of AB InBev trade practices, things like that.
I totally 100% agree with all of that as well. I could, and definitely, if I was in Goose Island's shoes, being like, screw that, I'm not letting this guy in. He says all these terrible things about us. Why are we going to do it? But what I would hope is that somebody smarter than me, like the Doug Veliky at Goose, would say, hey, man, he's going to get the beer, and it's just not going to work out well for us. So I don't see this work being
there's no such thing.
Right. I just don't see how this ends up going over well for Goose, and I would think that someone could have looked one or two steps ahead and figured that out. That's kind of really what surprised me the most. As somebody who is on the East Coast and not directly in the Chicago market, Bryan, any thoughts one way or another? Were you even aware of this? Did this touch your beer radar, this whole fiasco that's been brewing the past couple days?
It did. And, as I do with a lot of stuff, I take this from a perspective of a fellow journalist. Josh, whose accolades and skill I don't think anybody would question. He is one of the most important voices in American beer writing today. He is a great reporter and very good at his job. So to not invite someone who's your hometown paper, let alone a paper like the Chicago Tribune, who has a deep institutional knowledge of all the things that make his coverage really good, that's not great from the perspective of, a peer and his peers that want to see this kind of, journalistic enterprise go forward. So that's disappointing that he didn't get invited. And I can understand from his perspective absolutely why he was disappointed with that. The flip side of that is I can also easily see, or at least I should say I can imagine why things might have gone that way with Goose Island. If their goal is to maximize coverage, they may have done a cost-benefit analysis and determined that Josh might not have been needed. Again, that comes back to this idea that you're not inviting someone from the prominent paper in your hometown, of course. I will say, colleague and friend John Hall, who's covered the industry for a really long time.
Holl.
Holl. Thank you. Yes, that's important in this case. John Hall, based in New Jersey, a journalist who covers the industry. He reached out to Pray Tell agency, which does PR for AB and the Brewers Collective, and he heard back amongst a short statement that he received from it. They did note that for Goose Island that we do host private events, and from time to time these are invite only to specific people. That's the bracketed quote there. Would it have been nice for Josh, who's been there for years and been an important part of telling the story, to have gotten the chance? Absolutely. As a journalist, I'm disappointed that someone from the Chicago Tribune didn't get to be there. But ultimately, I have to try to look at these things from both perspectives. And if they didn't want to do it, then that's unfortunate, but that's their call as a private business. And I'm sure that whatever Josh comes up with in the end is going to be a great way to cover the situation in the beers.
Okay, very, very even keeled. See, I told you there wasn't going to be any hot takes. So.
Well, saving that for seltzer talk and ABV, Chris.
Right. That's right. I guess then we can just move right along. So you're welcome, Mr.
That was
Hobbs.
boring.
Yeah,
it was
right.
really boring.
Hey, I didn't have it on the outline for a reason. Okay.
Bourbon County what?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the answer.
There we go. That's the sort of
hot take. Dave Kahl, first one.
Yeah, man.
Why do they even have a line at Fobab? There's so many other great beers. There you go.
That's exactly why Bourbon County is what Bourbon County is, though, is because it still comes every season. It will be a thing. Prop Day will be a thing.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know. I mean,
You think it is
You just
in
answered your own question.
perpetuity?
Like, you just basically said Bourbon County what, and then you just answered your own question. At Fobab, though, it has a line all day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
And there are so many other, maybe a lot better beers, but that have no line at all.
Nobody's arguing
It's an
that.
education piece,
that's
right?
the same. So that's the same reason. Like if you're Goose Island, why not continue to develop that base and that audience, and let Josh Knoll, who will get the widest reach and the biggest audience, come to this thing to tell the story again, because your line at Fobab will be bigger as a result. So that's the other side of the coin.
Because they're Anheuser-Busch, they're not Goose Island, and Anheuser-Busch wants to control the narrative, so they don't want somebody else.
I mean, they're more Goose Island now than they've been in the past few years. With Todd Osmond at the helm, it's as close to Goose Island as I can remember. That's for damn sure. But I will say
Probably
this:
not from a PR standpoint.
well, PR is always going to be PR. PR is right down the middle, right? But it's vanilla.
Yep.
And I should mention, full disclosure, that I handle communications media for Revolution, and we do our barrel age program a little different. Instead of like one big release, we do it over 4, and so we have Josh at our brewery. Sometimes he's the first, sometimes he's not. Just because there's 4, it's not always realistic to have him in early enough, but we do that with Josh, so I feel weird not disclosing that,
Right.
that
you guys.
I am in the position that kind of Goose is in terms of figuring out how to do these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll probably go on take a break in about 15 minutes, but do we have time to talk about IP theft, or is that going to bore you too much, Mr.
Listen,
Mr.
man,
Hobbs?
just ask better questions, host.
Okay. What would you like to talk about? Is that a good question?
I mean, IP sounds just so interesting. Let's do that.
Okay. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
All right. So
Should we start with just trademarks?
let's talk about trademarks.
Trademarks.
Yeah. Do you trademark your beers at
No, we
Solemn
just
Oath?
actually put TM on the label and assume people trust that we did.
Okay. That's good.
Pretty much actually what we did with seltzer.
Yeah.
And then do you just go and do like an image search for like 80s video games and then be like, oh, that's a good label. Let's use that one next.
I mean,
And then put a TM on it next to Mega Man.
I'd have to bring Jordan into this conversation, but that might be accurate. I don't know.
I just thought it was interesting. There was an article in VinePair about that was sent to us by a listener. And it was about it said Got Milk Stout, I think was the name of the article. Got Milk Stout, craft beer's hazy respect for iconic intellectual property. And it's essentially how I definitely think it's a growing trend where primarily the small breweries are just, there's no other way to put it. They're just stealing intellectual property, iconography from other, U.S. things. Usually things from people of our collective age's childhood, I guess I'd say.
This is why I'm actually kind of interested in this.
Yeah.
So we released a beer earlier this year called Where the Sidewalk Bends.
Uh-huh.
It was actually a really good beer.
Shel Silverstein, right?
Yes, and we brewed it with our buds on Courtyard down in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jordan took a very literal approach to the label, and it was very much like a Jordan illustrated. He drew everything.
He's your Jordan Bean.
Jordan Gullett. Yep, Jordan Gullett is our illustrator at Solemn Oath, and he drew a very literal expression of where the sidewalk bends with Shel's inspiration. Ironically enough, there is a young up-and-coming hip-hop DJ artist out in the East Coast who also has a song or a album, I don't remember exactly, called Where the Sidewalk Bends. And apparently on his label art or album art or something, he straight up ripped Shel Silverstein. Well, somehow one of his fans saw our label
Yeah.
and brought it into his realm.
Now, can I pause you just for a moment because I don't want to hear the end of it? Because I was talking to somebody today about this, how I was going to talk about this story, and I said, I think we're going to come to a point where people who have stolen IP are going to go after people who also stole it and said,
no,
if you're anyone but Shel Silverstein, you're stealing my...
No, here's the irony. This is the part that we very much embraced it. We're like, we're going to make this so abundantly obvious that this is Shel Silverstein because we all grew up with him. We loved it. I mean, it was like, this is a beautiful thing. And the weirdest part was when it got brought into the realm, and I'd have to go back and look at my phone and see who this artist was. His fan base had no idea that he had ripped it from Shel Silverstein. They were accusing us of infringing upon his intellectual property.
Right.
Like we completely stole it from this original creator. And I'm just kind of like, well, dude, this is
right.
We did exactly what he did. And we
did the artist reach out to you?
Yeah, the artist reached out. We sent him a bunch of beer. We made nice. He tweeted with a picture of it. It was just a weird thing because I felt like all of a sudden we're seeing all these people attacking us, but they're attacking us really, and I felt honestly, they didn't realize that it wasn't this other artist to begin with. So it was just interesting. But like this is what IP is now with the digital age and with brewers doing all these other random things. And I almost kind of looked at this was like, well, maybe we don't go down this route again because this was a lot of work for a very little amount of beer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, actually relatable.
Yeah, actually.
Not totally boring, Chris.
Well done. I tried my best, and you foiled me in having worthless topics.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoy being here.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do you guys think that this will reach a tipping point? Do you think that these breweries are playing with fire, or these are just so quick and so tiny that they're just going to be blips, and they almost kind of know that what'll happen is someone will reach out and say, you know what, just don't make it again, and it's kind of going to be a one and done anyway, and then they'll just go on and do it with somebody else?
I think in a lot of cases they don't realize how small these breweries are. They think they're making a ton of money off of something that they're not. Buckle Down had made that Xavier McDaniel beer, and thinking, no, he's like an ex-NBA player who retired 20 years ago or something, and somebody hipped him to it, and he thought they were making a ton of money off it, and they're like, yeah, we kind of made like 800 cases or something. There's nothing to give you if you want, so I think that's probably the biggest issue. And then the all the breweries that do cereal beers with Frosted Flakes or Fruit Loops or whatever it is, and they just do a one-off thing, and by the time anyone complains, it's already sold out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's kind of, they're so small that they can just get away.
I think a lot of brewers end up knowing that. They know that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, because to be perfectly clear, legally speaking, there's no incentive to not actually do this. Because if you get
to do what
to not avoid this, to actually have some form of copyright infringement, it would behoove you, because you can probably get away with it. Now, here's the situation: is that if you get a cease and desist, from that point forward, that's when you're going to be liable. So if you're a small 500-barrel brewery who's slapping the likeness of a celebrity or an athlete on a can, or using trademarked or copyright visuals from a company, chances are you're going to get away with it. Chances are you might get some local or kind of niche press out of it. And ultimately, the time and effort for a company or a person to seize the legal opportunity to come after you is probably not going to be worth it. The flip side of that, if someone like, Kraft, for example, they've got a large legal department and lots of time and effort, and if they want to, why not? But there are smart ways to go about it. If you've got something like Frosted Flakes, for example, like Kellogg's Frosted Flakes is a trademark. Tony the Tiger is a trademark. The words together, Frosted Flakes, totally okay to use. Right. So you can kind of play off of that. But the issue is that, and I think this is why you see this happen so often, is one, no one's really talking out about this. There are a collection of peers who I've spoken to for stories that I've written about covering this, who are obviously upset usually described as kind of a lazy way to create artwork. But there's no guideline. Is that if you're not going to be breaking the law and you're not going to get in trouble for it, then why not? And I think that's where a lot of well, that's the thing. They're not. So if you're not going to be breaking the law in the way that you will get in trouble for it, I'll clarify, because I think that gray area is where all this exists.
So it's like you're not breaking the law unless you get caught. It's kind of that kind of
yeah.
Okay.
So like there was an example to put things in a little bit of a timely context. There was an example from late winter, early spring. There's a brewery just outside of Philadelphia that made a beer called the Bryce is Right, and it had the profile of Bryce Harper, who is superstar Major League Baseball player, formerly of the Washington Nationals, currently in the World Series. He now plays for the Phillies. So this brewery, Broken Goblet, they slapped his likeness on this, named it the Bryce is Right, a playoff of the Price is Right. The visuals look like the Price is Right. They use Bryce Harper's actual photo.
I know. Just how many people can you rip off at once?
And so
Kudos to them.
I don't think they ever actually made the beer. So I reached out to the owner to ask him about it, in which case he's done versions of this before to be very careful. He did one at the end of last year when the Philadelphia Eagles won a Super Bowl. He made a beer called Fly Eagles Fly PA, which used a version that was created of the Philadelphia Eagles logo. The thing with the Bryce Harper thing is not only did it clearly would have violated a host of laws, both state and federal, if it had gone to print. But Bob Peace, the CEO of the Brewers Association, gave it a shout out on Twitter. He commended the brewery for doing this. That itself, I think, speaks a lot to the level of kind of the gray area and the potential issues this raises when you have the leader of the Brewers Association giving props to a company for very blatantly choosing to break laws.
That's so funny. That is so funny.
What I want to add is just that nobody's mentioned is that it's really bad business. It's a very, very short-term strategy that you can do the Lucky Charms beer. Does anybody remember I remember it was in Virginia. Bryan, maybe you remember if you reported on it, but nobody remembers the name of that brewery. They just remember that there was a Lucky Charms beer. Maybe that it was in Virginia. But like these things, you can do it so many times. They're not that profitable. There's no long-term brand building. Nobody remembers who you are. You end up distracting yourself.
These are taproom breweries, man.
Doing these things. Yeah. But I just feel like it's a missed opportunity, and that you can only do this so long. And before you know it, you're going to be out of tricks, and you're going to have kind of squandered your
Tricks
brewery's chance. Yeah,
Maybe.
Yeah.
About Jukebox Hero, right? I mean, there's, I actually know the guys in Foreigner, and they do want to do a collaboration with Revolution.
Okay, now let's talk after.
Yeah, there you go. So there you go, guys. IP theft, baby. It'll lead to collabs with big famous bands. The crazy thing is, it is kind of a bummer to hear you say there's no reason for them not to do it, because with the Fly Eagles Fly PA, I bet you it sold a lot more than it normally would have, because Eagles fans are gonna go and buy it because it has the trademarked Philadelphia Eagles logo somewhat on there. It does seem kind of maybe bad business in some sense.
Maybe it's deliberate and it's like intentional that, hey, we're going to do this because we know we're going to create more of an awareness and a buzz around it, and we're going to just say, all right, well, if that cease and desist comes in, even better, then we can post about that. Or in some instances, it is maybe more homage. I'm a diehard Eagles fan. I've been an Eagles fan my whole life. I'm going to do this because I want to, and you know what? If they tell me to stop, I'll stop. But I'm going to do it because I truly love it. And that's a reality too, I think. I don't think anybody's doing it.
I think Pipeworks did some stuff with Papa Shango, which was like a low-level wrestler for WWF, I think, at the time. Mid-tier. mid-tier,
this, Doug?
lower
You know
lower
everything.
He had
mid-tier.
a solid run as the Intercontinental
Doug
Champion
knows
in
everything.
1994. So, sorry.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
So they did something with him, and I think he was okay with it, and then he was like, just don't ever make it again, or something like that. And I think Half Acre did one with Marty Stauffer, which was, he was an old, PBS naturalist wildlife show host, and he was okay with it, and they sent him some, and then they were going to make it again, and also put his likeness on it, and he was like, no, one time was okay. Now, I could be getting those, both the details of it wrong, but I think in both instances it was a specific person, not the likeness of a character owned by a big corporation. Mm-hmm. So it's probably easier for that person to find it. And in both cases, they were like, this is okay, this is kind of fun, but you're not going to make this a seasonal or a flagship based on my likeness being on it, which I think is
That's fair.
fine. And both
That's
of those,
fair.
I think, were legitimate homages.
That's
When
fair.
you have breweries who are, have identified themselves via this IP theft, and there are ones who do it all the time, and there are even ones who do it within certain genres. So there might be ones who are doing, like, video games from the mid-90s, or another one is doing, I don't know what you want to say, but like, whatever. Like
the Vale in Virginia is
Right.
a prominent example. Like, they got in heat with Dunkin' Donuts because they named a beer Virginia runs on DIPA, double IPA, called Extra Cream. That was the slogan. They made some beers that actually might have violated federal law because it included character from Stranger Things, and by having children on a label of a beer and promoting it as such could potentially be this area where it could be promoting it to minors. There's a whole host of ways, but ultimately,
they also have
it's
the
still okay.
Mega Man glass. Was it them or the Answer?
Yes.
Yeah. So they have this, Mega Man glass. They got a C&D on it. Now the glasses are going for $2,000 in the aftermarket.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy. On a Teku, just rip the logo off, guys, and make your own Teku. You can sell them in the aftermarket for a lot of money. I have to mention, you're listening to WLPN LP Chicago 105.5 FM Chicago. This is the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. We're going to take a break quickly, but I just wanted to kind of wrap this up and say that, to your point, Brian, there is a difference to people who are doing an homage, and I would say where the sidewalk bends is
That was homage.
if it's a one and done
100%.
thing, it becomes obvious then. You also employ and have, since the very beginning, as far as I know, a dedicated artist who is, creating a brand, and you are, putting an artist to, giving him a job, and which I think is really one of the coolest things about beer, is it is like this modern day outlet for pop art and graphic design, and that's awesome. That is super cool, and I know not every brewery can afford to do that, but it is kind of a bummer when you've got such like literal art on your cans, and then someone can just like rip off a cartoon character from Saturday morning cartoons, and that's what gets the buzz, and they're really, like Brian is saying, there's really no reason for them not to do that, because they're not going to get caught. It's going to sell them more beer, and the Vale they're hot, man. I mean, they're one of the hottest guys, and we've had Matt Tarpey on. He's a good guy. I'm not saying these are bad people, but just me personally, it's kind of not where I wish things were kind of going. So I guess what I'm saying is you should do more Shel Silverstein labels, and just do a search of rap artist albums before you do. Let's take a break, maybe air out the studio. It's getting a little stuffy in here. Come back, we'll listen to some tunes for 5 or 10, and then we'll come back with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. Here we go.
to the October with the steamboats, ancient goblins and wallows come at the grand light making a sound. The smell of death is all around, and at night when the cold wind blows, no one cares, nobody knows.
Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, and I am joined by my guests, Dave Kahl, Eric Hobbs, Doug Veliky, and the Deep V, Bryan Roth. And we are you there, Bryan? I mean, we just kind of came back. Okay, good.
I take that nickname with great pride.
Good.
Striking fear into hearts of all crew neck wearers everywhere.
Yeah, man.
It's a good wrestling gimmick.
That's true. So I was reading your high and wide series of articles on GBH, Bryan, and I like them, and I thought we should talk about it a little bit. Could you just give us a quick setup to the theme of these articles?
Sure. So 2019 was the first year in the state of Colorado that grocery and convenience store chains across the state could sell full-strength beer above 3.2% alcohol. Up until this point, a chain could designate one store in the state to do that. But starting this year was the first time that all stores across a footprint, so like King Soopers is a popular grocery store chain, part of the Kroger family. So instead of having one store in Colorado, now every store across the state that they own can have any amount of full-strength beer that they so choose. And so for a long time, Kansas, Oklahoma were other examples of states where like Miller Coors and Anheuser-Busch would make specialty versions of their products that met those ABV standards. Exactly. Up until this point, you would have to buy your full-strength beer in liquor stores. And for all intents purposes, when we talk about full-strength beer, we're talking craft beer. We're talking about things that are going to be a higher ABV, even if we're talking about a modest 5%. So 2019 was the first year for that. And so what I really wanted to find out in terms of exploring what that law did were three things. One, what the impact so far has been for liquor stores, which both in terms of numbers generally reported and conversations with those owners has not been good. Number two was the way that what was this change doing in terms of breweries small and big for the way that they were thinking about their kind of two market strategies. What did this do with the way that they were thinking about sales and where and how they were going to be moving their beer? And third, ultimately, as it always does, I just want to know kind of what was doing well. You know, what were the brands, what were the styles that are performing well, and what does that mean moving forward in how people might think about this new state of beer in Colorado itself. And so it's been the prevailing answer amongst many that I got from this was, one, 2019 itself may be too early to really get a good sense of it, but kind of in conclusion, the liquor stores are in a hard spot right now. There was one store owner who's told me that he lost about 20% of his sales and that he had to adjust staffing, which seems to be a reoccurring theme for a lot of those stores. For breweries, if you're a small guy, one of the things that comes about from this that was suggested to me was that this gives you an opportunity to get even more local than you were before. Because if you're making a small amount of beer and all of a sudden you have more stores available in your very local market, then you can kind of hunker down even more and focus on those groceries and liquor stores that are right near you. And of course, as always, IPA is doing great.
Mm-hmm. Did you talk to any consumers? Like, now that the consumers that used to have to make a second trip to go, to a dedicated liquor store, but now can go to a grocery store, can they buy wine and spirits at the grocery store now, or just full strength beer?
So a beer, and I believe they can still do wine there as well. I think that there are two camps in terms of what this means, and this kind of gets into it in something that both liquor store owners and brewery owners acknowledged in conversations, is that, if you're talking about Colorado, in a place like Boulder, for example, which is a pretty progressive community, people there will fall into people who have been going to liquor stores, their local liquor store, for a really long time. They've maybe made relationships with the owners there. They know that as their place to go. It's not a big deal if they need to go around the corner or take an extra stop in a parking lot to go get beer from a small, locally owned business. Because in the state of Colorado, it's a license per owner. So not only is the person at the store, the owner, making decisions or delegating someone to make decisions in terms of what beer they buy, they're being very kind of direct in what they're doing. And a lot of times you get that one-on-one, face-to-face interaction as a customer and the owner. So in a place like Boulder, where it might not be a big deal and it's a community that values that kind of thing, that's great. But the problem for both liquor store owners and brewery owners that they admitted was that convenience is a really big thing. And this shouldn't surprise anybody, really, that if you are going to the grocery store, you're on a limited schedule, you need to get things for dinner, and you need to pick up a 6-pack of beer, that's going to save you time. And in a case for a lot of people, that is a great decider, is that I can save 20 minutes because I can just grab a 6-pack from a local brewery in my King Soopers and be on my way. And so that is kind of the schism right now, which is going to further play out in 2020. But the big difference is that obviously coming from essentially 0 to 60, grocery stores are selling a lot of beer right now. Liquor stores are seeing decreases in pretty much everything. At least that's what the liquor stores tracked by IRI.
And that's what interested me, was how you're seeing something kind of catch up to the rest of the country so rapidly. So some of what you're seeing is kind of highlighted more apparently than you see it elsewhere. Some of the the market forces and how how craft beer is kind of playing in the retail marketplace now was really highlighted. You were nodding a lot while Bryan was talking, Eric. Anything that you especially you were just nodding?
No,
I don't know why.
I get it. No, I get it from you start talking about how many breweries there are, how important it is, especially when these smaller breweries are past that 2-3 year point where they're trying to fill out their footprint. If you got to deliver in a 150-mile radius, and all of a sudden you can consolidate that to 30 miles, think about the efficiency there. Think about the savings. Think about the opportunity. I mean, that's significant. So this is very big in our world, and in a world like Colorado, where craft beer has been huge for a long time. It's just a big deal, and I think it's a hot topic, and I think what Bryan's doing, I think this is a very important thing to be talking about, because it's a big change in the landscape. And anytime there's a big change in the landscape, I'm always interested to see how it's evolving, because it doesn't necessarily pertain to Illinois, but it definitely further evolves the industry, and I get it. I mean, it's a shift. It's another shift.
Mm-hmm. The way I kind of saw it as it pertains to Illinois and everywhere, and Virginia now, or North Carolina, I'm sorry, you can get beer at grocery stores where you are, right, Bryan, or no?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. And I think it seems to me that just a few years ago, there weren't that many breweries that were large enough to be pushing volume through grocery stores. Let's say 5 years ago. I mean, how old is Rev's production facility, Doug?
7.5 years.
Okay, so we'll say maybe a little more than 5 years ago, but 5 years ago, there weren't that many. So this kind of law was kind of mostly irrelevant. There were certainly a few. There were people who were going to buy Sam Adams, and they were going to buy some of the bigger guys, certainly Fat Tire, New Belgium out there. But now, so everywhere else, you kind of had this. It was how it was, even though it was legally mandated there in Colorado. Everywhere else, it was people were going to the specialty store to get this sort of stuff. Now, with the rise of craft beer, these places are going to grocery. I mean, when you were working for the distributor, Dave, I mean, that's you dealt with a lot of some big brands. We were just talking about Ballast Point. I mean, they weren't going to sell all the beer they needed to sell in Chicago through mom and pop shops. They needed to go to retail, I would assume, right?
Oh yeah, they absolutely focused on big box stores. I think the issue isn't you're saying this is a benefit in Colorado for the breweries. It's really just a hit for the Chris Quinns of the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a boon for big and small breweries, depending on what they want to do. Both, larger breweries all of a sudden can play in this sandbox they haven't had an advantage for, and they've got the production facilities. For liquor stores who now may have some extra space, smaller breweries all of a sudden have an opportunity that they might not have had before. So there was an example of Westfax Brewing, which is in Lakewood, Colorado, which is going to do about 600 barrels this year. And the owner there was telling me that they don't really need to do it. They sell plenty of what they package out of their tap room, but now they've got a New England style IPA called Urban Lumberjack, and now all of a sudden, should they choose, when they've got a lineup of liquor stores coming and clamoring to get their product, now they have new relationships they can form. The downside is, again, just kind of what that does, broadly speaking, for some of these businesses that have been working with them for larger breweries for a long time.
Yeah, and I think, as someone who I think can speak pretty competently, well, at least about my scenario, is you've got these breweries that at these specialty shops, once, if there's no exclusivity and you're not, artificially, and by that I mean, through legislation, like in Colorado, artificially mandated that you have to go to a liquor store, where I grew up in Pennsylvania, where it's insane, where you have to go to a beer distributor and buy beer by the case, and then a state store to buy the rest of your liquor, and then a grocery store can't sell any of it. That's one thing. And you've got this kind of artificial market that's been created. But here in Chicago, if you have a liquor license, you have a liquor license, and it doesn't matter if you have 1 million square feet or 100 square feet. And with the growth of craft, these breweries like the Revolutions and the Ballast Points and so many others of the world, they need these big retail outlets, because that's where they're going to move the volume. It's going to keep them in business. These specialty stores, who used to sell these products because they were specialty products, now those customers don't buy those beers in the same volume, because I can get that beer at the grocery store. I'm coming to you because I want something special. So you go to the little guys, right? Just like you were saying with Urban Lumberjack, what they may do, right, Bryan? But the issue now is, on the small side, people are realizing that retail margin, right from that own premise margin, is really, really good. And we can bring people and give them an experience out the front door. So now, it's like getting hit from both ends a little bit. So now what do these specialty shops do? And you know what? Stuff changes over time, and you can change in other ways. I can decide I only want to sell, mezcal, that has mole added to it, like Dave Kahl just brought. Maybe that's what I want to be. I want to be the mezcal. Oh wait, Christina's already doing that. Never mind, I can't do that. So, but I can, there's things I can do. But in the world of craft beer, there's things I can do there as well. But what I was reading in that article was like, okay, these people are very quickly having to adjust to what always kind of should have been, and they're realizing that it's difficult, because I think I think that Urban Lumberjack guy literally said hyped breweries and was talking about like Weldworks and Cerebral and stuff like that. And they're tap rooms, man. I mean, they wanna keep as much of it internally as they possibly can. And it's interesting for these independent liquor stores. What do they have? What do they have to offer the customer, and what do they have to offer the suppliers now, and which suppliers? That's what kind of interested me, and that's what I was very interested to get all your guys' take on. Do you still see a continuing place for the uniqueness of a specialty shop, and where do you see that kind of fitting in as this almost like bifurcation of craft beer continues, where you've got the regional guys who need distribution to keep the lights on, and the guys who are pulling in and in and in, and you're saying, Eric, about a 30, square foot or a 30-mile radius. Well, what if it's my tap room radius? I mean, that's ideal. I mean, if Sierra Nevada could sell everything out their front door, I'm sure they would. If they could move 1 million barrels a year across their countertops, why wouldn't they? They'd be a lot more profitable if they could. So you can't blame them for wanting to do that. I don't know.
Are you wanting me to start with that?
Yeah. Any of what I just said. Why don't we have Bryan talk while you think?
Yeah. What I'll key this up, because I think that you guys in the studio have really great perspective to add to this, and this comes back to what you were talking about at the top of the show regard to the Cicerone program too. Is that with the liquor stores, the two things that they have going for them now, of which are arguments that they have to make constantly every day to customers, is that one, they will get things that are going to be a little bit different, in some cases a lot of it different, than what the chain stores will get. So for example, in Fort Collins, there was a liquor store who was promoting out-of-state beers from Toppling Goliath and Russian River for Pliny the Elder as things that he has that no one else can get, and that made him special. But ultimately, one of the things that came up over and over again was this idea that if you go into a liquor store, you're going to get the kind of customer service that you will never get at a grocery store. Is that somebody from a brewery is going to go into that liquor store and talk to the person who's responsible for buying and ultimately selling that beer, whereas you might go to, corporate headquarters for Kroger and make a sale for your brewery to ship to a bunch of stores across the state. So in this day and age, when I think a lot of conversations talk about the value and importance of education and the way you can kind of focus that and imbue that on your customers, this now, for better or worse, is a really important linchpin for liquor stores, that you have the experience and the knowledge to tell people why it's so special and why people will like it. And you can do that hand sale where it doesn't exist in a grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone I want to add to that?
Doug,
Yep.
I want to hear your thoughts on this.
So like I mentioned, I had never been to Colorado until a few weeks ago, and I thank you, Bryan, for writing this, because I learned a lot from reading it. I did not know this was a law in Colorado, so it caught me by surprise. My first reaction was just feeling very bad for these small retailers who, especially ones that may have opened, maybe just a few years before this, thinking that they had this kind of opportunity, they had this, advantage over a big box store, and then to have that taken away, that's a scary, abrupt loss of business to cope with. But now that that's done and there's nothing that can be done about it, it seems like it puts a lot of pressure on the store to be more than just a liquor store. Not to pat you on the back too much, Chris, but I mean, you started a video or a YouTube channel doing beer videos, educating beer drinkers on tasting beer before you even opened your shop, and kind of had that value proposition to kind of build a customer base before you even had a store to sell to them, that's evolved into this podcast that's out there and has a, following across the country of people who, whether they're in Chicago and now become a loyal patron of your store because they get this 2 hours of interesting content to learn more about the industry on a variety of topics, like having that dynamic and kind of very indirectly attaching it to your business, your store. Like, that's huge. And there's only so many people that are probably store owners that are wired that way to do this and come here every single Thursday. But it almost seems like, whether it's that or, just getting out there and establishing special relationships with these small breweries that are very beloved and maybe don't know what they're doing in the kind of selling to stores, or just getting in there and kind of offering them special opportunities to try to get exclusive beers in your store that only you, or maybe you and only a select others, have the ability to sell because they're not ready for the demands of a big box store, or maybe don't have a distribution partner that can handle one. But it kind of forces you to change your business style, whether it's on a creative marketing side or just on the relationship side. But it seems like if you're in that business and you want to get back to where you were, you're going to be on a kind of never-ending path of like fighting for customers, fighting for these relationships that everybody's going to be doing a lot of the same. And that just seems like it's now, right, wrong, or indifferent, the new normal for these independent liquor stores.
There's limited space at grocery stores too. You got to remember that they're not, in Colorado, they're bringing in Oscar Blues and New Belgium, Avery, Left Hand, Great Divide, Ska, and Upslope, 3 others maybe, and the rest, the other 200 breweries are sold through independent stores. So there's no loyalty at those grocery stores. If you screw up and don't get them a product that they have a shelf space for, they drop you. If it doesn't sell, they drop you. There isn't as much attention as the breweries give those stores to get that shelf space, and then they discount pricing for them too. You've got hundreds of other breweries that you can work with on the independent level, the self-distributed breweries, the ones that can't get into those stores. Even if you sell the same beers as the ones in the grocery store, you go, why should I sell this in my local independent store when they can get it for cheaper down at the big box store? And we have that issue here with Benny's. I don't want to throw them under the bus. They've been a great alcohol store in the state, but they undercut pricing big time, on a lot of major products here that I've talked to so many small stores that go, I don't even want to carry that product anymore. I like it, but I can't compete. So I'm going to carry this. I've got limited shelf space too. I'm going to give it to somebody else.
For some of the big beers that we really don't carry anyway, they literally sell it for less than I can buy it for. So, they just have that power to do it. So you have to be creative and kind of carve out your niche. These exclusive drops and stuff like that are getting weirder and weirder and weirder, and it's changing. And I think it's just going to be, they call it the long tail. I think that's what that is. That's the long tail, and it's just going to stretch out and become smaller and smaller and smaller because there's going to be so much good product. And I've always said on this show, that rare beer isn't rare as a whole. There's always something rare, and people are starting to realize it. And people, I think breweries are finding new ways to keep stuff rare by doing little, variants on stuff all the time. This time it has this hop in it, or this time it's in this barrel, this time it's got this adjunct, and kind of stretching out the rarity and keeping the quantities small. I think the other thing that they're doing now are these drops, that's coming up where people are doing these splash drops. We talked about it last week a little bit. I think the novelty of this stuff is going to wear off, where I don't think they're going to want to get the double marshmallow version of this stout now. They had the single marshmallow version, which was definitely better than the regular version, which just had coffee and chocolate in it. And I mean, you're laughing, but this is
not as good as last year's.
Right, but not as good as last year's. But the thing is, there is probably a beer that is like that, and if it's not with those ingredients, just switch them up a little bit. It always has marshmallow and coffee, but the chocolate's been doubled. I mean, they're finding new ways to be novel, and I think it's becoming more difficult, is what it seems like to me. So, I mean, playing to that seems, I think, personally, I don't know if I've said this on the show before, I think you have to find the breweries that you care about and that you believe in and that are maybe underrepresented in kind of the hearts and minds, and in the age of 400 breweries in a single state are kind of getting lost in the shuffle, and re-elevating them and hoping that you can get people to believe in it and say, hey, I know this is the hyped stuff, but this stuff's really great, and these are great people and a great brewery, and kind of forging those relationships. And what I'm seeing is, as an independent, we're preparing to cast a wider net now, because I think a lot of the little guys are pulling in, and we love our big beer partners as well, but we also want to have a curated list, and having the same thing that the grocery stores have isn't curated. The fact that grocery stores have awesome beer is good. I mean, that is a win, but that doesn't necessarily help me individually, and it does in some senses, quite a bit, but the fact that Anti-Hero isn't flying off the shelves like it used to doesn't help me. I have to kind of work with what I've got, and we're casting a wider net, and it's going to be it's not just going to be local now. It's going to have to be, who is it across the country that we can get distribution on and makes awesome stuff and we can believe in. If there's a way I can tie, I think, some of these things together too, which I think makes a really important point as it relates to Colorado and ultimately the way things are going, broadly speaking, for the craft brewing industry in the U.S. is that, so in Colorado, it was described to me by a couple people as a Wild West situation. 2019 presents this opportunity for grocery stores and liquor stores to take this year, sort things out as best they can, and just as fast as they can to it too. In 2020 being this opportunity for things to kind of shake out a little bit. One of the people I talked to for the story was one of the owners from Ratio Beer Works, which is in Denver, Jason Zumbrunnan, who told me that in these kinds of new sales scenarios, he's not worried about Miller Coors and AB InBev. I'm going to read this quote because I didn't want to mess it up. So this is the quote from Jason. He said, quote, "In reality, we're competing against regionals like New Belgium, Odell, Left Hand, or Oscar Blues. Those are the guys that can squeeze us out." And so to bring it back to what you were just talking about, Chris, too, is that, if you're looking at the coffee chocolate marshmallow stout that's made by a local brewery that might be made with similar ingredients for a lesser price by a regional that you find on that grocery store shelf, that's what people care about. If they're thinking about a flavor experience, price is always really, really high, if not the highest point of influence for those kinds of consumers. So as these things kind of shift, it represents what is happening more broadly in the industry too, where we talk about the need for what larger craft is dealing with slowing sales and lowering production volumes, where these little guys who are kind of moving the needle in terms of ideas and innovation and getting things people excited about specific flavors or styles. And here is the focal point, and it's happening in real time in Colorado, where all of a sudden these things kind of meet up. And, Ratio, which is one of the more highly regarded breweries in Denver, he's saying, when they're hoping next year to start entering chain sales, and the people that they're eyeing as their competition to make it difficult for them are the stalwarts of the craft beer industry. They're worried about New Belgium and Left Hand. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's difficult for those folks as well. Is there anything you wanted to say, Eric, or if you don't have anything to?
No, I mean, it's interesting to hear it from all sides because I think Bryan has definitely presented a really kind of robust and all-encompassing perspective. However, for the guys like Salamoth, like us, you say you're getting it from both sides, but so are we.
That's what I was just going to say.
So are we.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to battle with relevance with all the new up-and-comers, and we also have to get it from our distributor, which is kind of crazy considering like our distributor is our partner. That's the person that is representing us as they're going to market. They're bringing us to all of these independent retailers or chain retailers or any retailer for that matter. So with chains, it's easy. I do the legwork. We set the programming. Planograms are set. Just make sure we stay on the shelf. Independence is tough, right? Where once our local wholesaler used to be just like the epitome of the best. All of the cicerones in and around Chicagoland, which most of them are still in the industry. They're all representing other breweries or other brands. But, over the past few years, it's definitely changed. And it's not to say that they're not the best anymore. I would argue that they're still one of the best, but the industry has shifted so drastically that we are now up against our own wholesaler in terms of share of mind. Mm-hmm. And coming out of the annual business planning season, a big part of our conversation was, how much do you care about us compared to the other ones? Do you want us to succeed, or you want this other brewery that's down 50% to be only down 50, or you want to try to hustle them back to down 25? How hard is that conversation to have? Especially when it's some world-renowned industry icon of a brewery that just doesn't, for some reason, maintain the relevance here. So you can't point to one thing that says this is right or wrong. However, it's our reality. So why do I want to open another taproom in Chicago? Because it's better for our business. Why are we rolling out a seltzer? Because it's better for our business and we can do it just as good or, in my opinion, better than some of the other ones. Why are we going to open another tap room? Because we're legally allowed to. In Illinois, you can do that. Mm-hmm. Colorado's laws are crazy and changing. Well, so are Illinois'. We can have a third tap room that we can service ourselves. So when I'm, as a business manager, thinking about the relevance of Salamoth at the Beer Temple, hey, you guys don't buy all of our beers. You are definitely more interested in the limited release stuff that comes out once in a while.
We like the Lou.
And Lou, you guys are stalwarts with Lou. Good, thank you for that. But it's not that I think that you're wrong. It's just that you're doing what's right for your business.
Yeah.
And in the same breath, in the same conversation, I need to figure out a way to do what's right for our business. So it's kind of the same conversation, but at the same time, I'm kind of seeing it with a little bit of different perspective. So I appreciate where everybody's coming from, but at the same time, from the manufacturer standpoint, I actually feel like I'm maybe in the most powerful position because at the end of the day, we're the ones making it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can have your outlets, and you have we
can pivot, we can change, we can make new things, we can try new things, we can change formats, we can change pricing, we can choose different distributors, we can open new markets, we can close markets, we can find new distributors, we can do all sorts of new things. Sometimes Chris, no offense, I'm not saying this to be a dick. I am a dick, you know that, but like your beer temple is the beer temple. This is where it is. This is what it is. You can add more breweries, you can bring more brands in the mix, you can do what you got to do, but it's going to have to exist within the parameters and the boundaries in which you've already set for yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's what your world is. And kudos the fact that you had the foresight to go out and build an audience and develop what you knew to develop before you had the space to actually bring them in. And I wish there were more people like you, because I want to work with guys like you, because I think you actually truly get it. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to work with who you have to work with, and you got to get the most out of what you got. And it's unfortunately kind of a bit of a callous way to say it, but that's the reality, man.
No, I don't think you said anything that hasn't been said on the show many times before. I think I come back to this phrase a lot, although not recently, which was by the former owner of Green Flash, who called it, the big squeeze. And I think that's what it is. I mean, everyone's just getting kind of squeezed, and I don't think it's it's not callous. It's like, I don't think you're being personal. I don't think you have any personal animosity. You got to do what's right by you. And I'm not blaming you for opening up 5 tap rooms, 10 tap rooms. I'm not saying I would do the same thing if I were not in your place, but it is interesting to see, one, where this is going and what this also means for beer. I mean, it is going to be an interesting world where you get your craft beer from your grocery stores or from the tap room. That's weird. That's just very different.
It's definitely
very different.
But you know,
Very
it's why I see when you say I want to embrace Splash. I get it, and we've been moderately successful with Splash ourselves. But there is a shelf.
Oh,
life
I
there.
didn't say I want to embrace Splash.
Well, but if so
I think there's maybe a short lifespan of Splash. Is what I think.
What I'm realizing is that's kind of it. It's like, well, how do you find that fine balance? And I'll tell you what, it is different in every market. You can only be there so often to where they're like, oh, I've had this, or I trust you, or I don't. So even that's still in kind of discovery mode. So we'll see what breweries want to do with that, but what size and scale is meaningful enough for some breweries to even do it. Like I look at Doug and I'm like, well, Doug, if you splash a market, what is Rev's splash version of that? Because I tell you, it's probably a lot different than what Solemn Oaths is.
And my buyer was on 2 weeks ago saying he already is starting to have fatigue from Splash. It's just begun. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, we're having people come up to me every week. We've had at least that I know of, and they go to Max first. I know of 2 this week that they've reached out about doing. 3 about it this week. So we see the fatigue first, and then the way it goes is with we buy less. So we only buy 1 case instead of 5 cases or 20 cases or 50 cases. And I mean, if we're the beer temple, as you said, what does that mean for everyone else? So like the other thing is, how does that disrupt sales of Snaggletooth?
It completely does.
It totally
Absolutely
screws
does.
up the market. But and this is the stuff that I talk about with my guys is we have to be intentional, but also understand our local guys are fighting the local war. We love these guys, but that does not mean that like their business interests are always going to be aligned with ours. If Solemn Oath has to open up their tap rooms and draw people there, that's fine. But I mean, that's disrupting our business. We can't say, no, we're not going to do it because it's going to disrupt somebody else's business. And I know a brewery here in Chicago who doesn't want to do splash drops because they know it disrupts their business here when other people do it, and they don't want to do that to other people. And I was like, man, that's a rough.
Dude, and I completely understand that. And I would even to your point when you said, hey, we're opening a tap room, does that change our perspective of Solemn Oath? I mean, dude, I sat on a similar conversation podcast with Jay at the Map Room, and we were opening up the street from him, and we had to make some pretty hard points about like, look, this is what we are and who we are and what we got to do right now, and if that means we might not be on tap at the Map Room anymore, that's up to you. We're not trying to be another bar that's serving a shot and a beer. I'm not bringing in other breweries. I'm doing what we make. I'm providing a way for people to experience our products in a different environment that's quite similar to what you might get if you come to Naperville. I would argue probably a little bit better because we had a chance to redesign and rethink everything. But at the same time, is that as relevant as you up where you are? Probably not, because we don't necessarily share a lot of the same customer base in that direct vicinity. So do I think your business would be affected the same way that maybe Jay's would? Probably not. But at the same time, I respect your need to adjust and manage your business accordingly.
Well, I have 2 tap rooms within 10-minute walk of me. Yeah,
totally.
3.
But also to that point, though, when you look at the local fight, who do you want to stand behind? Like, who do you want beer to be a thing locally? Or do you want it to be a cycle of new, and you never know who's going to come up next, and is this going to sustain? Because if you don't trust that, then you should probably pick a few people to stand in their corner and say, I'm going to always have this, and I'm going to stand by these regardless of what I see come next. Because Splash is great and you can get some amazing breweries coming and going, but at the same time, there needs to be a foundation. Right? Everybody talks about the craft bubble again. Well, we know there's not going to be a bubble because there's too strong of a foundation. But if everything just becomes completely focused on the new, well, then you got a crack in the foundation, if you're asking me.
I couldn't agree more. I think right now, it used to be like breweries say, well, this beer keeps the lights on. I mean, I think for someone like the Beer Temple or the Beer Cellar in Glen Ellen and now in Geneva and other places like that, there is a strong portion of people coming in wanting to know what is new this week. And there's also people who want, for me, they want to buy, has your 100 come in from Eyinger? Because I'm buying a case of that. And if you don't, I'm buying this other German beer because I love that sort of stuff. Or the guy who is, picking up a bottle of wine and also a 6-pack or a 12-pack or something like that. So we serve all of those people, but there are the hobbyists who want that new. And if the new is not being made available to me or is not as interesting in the eye of the hobbyist because it's not at the spot of origin, I got to go somewhere else and find that and serve that customer and give them what they want and go and find. Like, I found something. I've curated this for you. And the other thing that becomes hard is you said, I'm not serving other people's beer. And I know people out there, I know you because you've already come up to me, you brewery owners, and rolled your eyes and saying this isn't a thing. But there are breweries who are now, almost seems to me like banding together and are looking at maybe potentially doing, serving other people's beers in kind of their circle of friends and almost.
Well, and let me asterisk that is,
yeah,
when we brew a beer with Sean at Cerebral and he's in town hanging out, like, yeah, dude, we're going to throw your beer on tap, but we're going to buy a sixtel. We're going to serve the 60 people in the tap. Right. And I know what you're referencing. I'm just saying, like, I don't want to be the guy that says, like, we'll never serve another person's beer. But, like, if we ever, if we ever get brought up to the big leagues and brew with Revolution, and as I'm nudging Doug right here.
Well, you guys did the thing with Hop Butcher, right?
Yeah, totally. We got another beer coming up with Hop Butcher, and we will do more of that. I'm just saying, I will not say that I won't serve other people's beer at any tap room now that the Illinois law allows it.
Yeah.
Because if we brew with them, I want to have our beer on tap, but I also want to showcase some of their other stuff, especially if they're an out-of-state brewery that isn't otherwise serving their beers here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense. I get it. Is there anything on that topic anyone wants to say? No? All right. Well, in that case, I think we should probably end things. We have a few more minutes. Is there anything people would like to say in closing? Bryan, anything you wanna promote? Or I can't. You know what I mean.
Actually, I want to give a shout out to friend Liz Garibay, who has put together and hosting the Beer Culture Summit this weekend in Chicago. It's a really impressive lineup of writers and historians and people who have thought about and write about and think about beer a lot. I think it's a really great event, and I hope some of the listeners will be able to get there this weekend to be part of it.
Here, absolutely. Nice. You should absolutely look at there. I think it's a Chicago Beer Summit. There's a whole list, 3 days, I think, of forums and talks and stuff like that going on. Dave, I'm sure you're talking at one of them, aren't you?
I'm not.
You're not?
It's...
Well, I take it all back. This summit's bogus.
Yeah, I think it's pretty lame, to be honest. No.
Yeah.
I think they could have done a better job with advertising it, to be honest. And I'm not a big social media person or any of that stuff. So, and I've been kind of in my bubble out there, but I didn't even know about this until like a week ago. So, they got to do a little bit better work of promoting this
Well,
thing.
let's help do a little bit of that. It's the ChicagoBrewseum.org/beer-culture-summit. Just look up Chicago Brewseum. and that's where the summit's going on. A lot of cool stuff.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
A real quick story. 2015, I missed an opportunity for what I thought was going to be a great job for myself. And that's when I started my current blog. And when I started this thing, I reached out to, I knew I needed to work with other breweries to give it some kind of credibility. So I reached out to people I didn't know but knew who they were. And early on, only one person responded and kind of helped me get one of my first pieces going, and that was Eric sitting next to me. And then at GABF this year, I won an award for the best beer commentary or criticism and got presented to me by Bryan on the line right now. And wanted to thank Eric for kind of taking a chance on me with no history, nothing to kind of show for, but being willing to sit down and talk to me. Thanking Bryan for what he does for the Beer Writers Guild, and just encouraging anybody who is in a position to give anybody aspiring to do anything in beer, giving them a chance, even if they don't maybe have the resume, hearing them out and helping them in any way, because we need more voices. We need new blood in the industry. So that's just something I wanted to put out there for anybody listening. Take chances on people.
Doug, I'm not at all surprised that was beautifully put. Well done, Doug.
Thanks,
and well
thank
deserved.
You, Eric, and thank you, Bryan.
No thanks to me. That's fine. Nope, too late. No. You already said enough. Thanks to all of my guests. In order of how much I want to thank them: Bryan Roth, Dave Kahl, Eric Hobbs. Doug Veliky. Thank you guys so much. It's been a treat having all you guys in. We will see you next week with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. So long.
Hey, buddy. Thank you.
All right.
That's what we said. To never be heard, it's seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard.